As I said when I started, I started this push of things about 5 years ago as well, like a lot of people did. I joined the group, and I know I'm not a mom, but Indiana Moms Against Gun Control. It's echoing what Tammy was saying and what Connie was saying. We came out here in January of 2013. There's a rally being started by Shannon Watts and her compatriots right here at the State House, and friends of mine who are moms started the group. They were here because they heard the other group saying, we moms need to do this, and they disagree. And I've been with them. There I see faces out here who've been with them who are friends, who've known them, who know who they are, and that's where I got my start. And I knew them from Indiana Gun Owners Forum, and even more from IndianaShooters.com forum. So that one went through a revision, and there's an S on it, but that's friends of mine. Check your feelings at the door when you log in. Okay, I wanted to wrap this up by saying this weekend, this is a historic weekend, and Joe brought this up earlier. He mentioned that the ship landed that day with the orders for General Gage in Boston, and those orders were to go confiscate the powder and ball and arms and arrest the patriots of the colonies. And that day was actually Good Friday in that year. Okay, I want you to understand. You being here, we had 3 weeks. There are 1,500, I would estimate, here that we've been sharing this event for 3 weeks. Those orders went out and were executed. 1,500 or so British regulars marched out of Boston on the night of April 18th. 2 men left that night. William Dawes by Boston Neck, and a guy you probably heard of because there's a poem by him, he's the more well-known, Paul Revere. Rode across the bay and rode out of Charleston, across the bay, towards Lexington. Paul Revere was nearly captured by a British patrol that night. Before he reached Lexington, he diverted. He sent word by what is essentially a phone tree, a Revolutionary era phone tree. Signal fires, other riders were sent. The British marched, and at dawn, they reached Lexington. Fortunately, they were silly. But when they reached Lexington, there were 70 or 80 men standing on the green, off to the side of the road, doing nothing. They were armed, which was allowed. And they stood there. And these 300 British regulars, Marines, under a hot-headed lieutenant, pulled up in front of them and marched down right in front of them and took a battle formation. And without orders, the most disciplined military in the world, a shot rang out somewhere. History doesn't know where. As a person who studied the event, teaches it, I'm going to say it wasn't a patriot, it wasn't a colonist, because when we shot, officers died. No British soldier, the worst wound was a minor flesh wound. But in response to that shot off somewhere, it sounded like a pistol. The only person with pistols were officers. The British, our government at the time, because we weren't Americans yet, we were still British colonists, let out a ragged volley and then charged and bayoneted that small group of unthreatening 80 men who were just ordered to disband, but not to give up their weapons. The rest of that day is history, because that's the Battle of Lexington in about 3 sentences. The same thing happened at the North Bridge. British were tearing up the bridge that didn't belong to them. and the colonists marched down, and without orders, again, the British fired on their own citizens. Those citizens are you. They were patrons, they were shopkeepers, they were tradesmen, they were artisans, blacksmiths. And still we weren't Americans, because we didn't fire until fired upon as the standing order. That came later. My point is this. By later that day, by noon, those 1,500 or so British men, armed men, were surrounded and under a circle of fire by over 3,000 patriots by the time we became Americans later that day. By the next morning, 15,000 patriots. That's the population of Boston at that time. 15,000 patriots responded by the next morning. They weren't lining up to petition their government. They were lining up risking getting shot. We have it easy because our founders realized what they needed to do to give us the opportunity. We need to use it. We heard about education. Tammy spoke about it. Others spoke about it. We need to educate not only on firearm safety, but on what our history really is, and get people involved. Jack mentioned that earlier. This is about you. It's about us.
And I'm going to lose my train of thought.
I didn't get to put anything together because I've been so busy putting things together. So I'm going off the cuff here. But we need to get involved. The past two sessions, and this past a year ago through the summer, we had hearings down here for constitutional carry. The legislators put out questionnaires. And what we heard back, those of us who've been involved, was we don't have the votes. Too many of the politicians are not hearing from a broad enough spectrum of people. Too many people don't understand what the law does. And as I said in my interview last night, I got interviewed by Wish TV on spur of the moment last night. We got to know what the law does. The other side puts out polls and it sounds great. They get all this response. Should we do this? Should we do that? But what happens is the legislation doesn't reflect what they think it does. We need to be aware and we need to make people understand. We need you and everyone else and everyone you know to get up and be involved. And that's what our groups are about. That's what being a patriot is. It's being part of that solution. It's spreading that knowledge. I'm going to step back for a second. I had to fix my sign after I carried it down here on March 24th because it got all wet and ran. At the top of this, I've never been able to find out who said it. The responsibility for freedom lies with all free people. That's you, that's me. We need to be active. Guy, I think it was just mentioned the 4 boxes. I always say there's 5. People forget the mailbox. It's easy, but it takes everybody. One person sharing 30 letters to their state legislator is fine. But if that legislator hears from 30 people one time, that's even better. Talk to your neighbors. Talk where you're at. We can't hide this. A lot of people, a lot of states don't have the right. They actually don't have the right in several states to carry, not even conceal when they come to a rally like this. What do you say to that? That's right. We carry legally where we go. And we've been legal and we'll stay legal because that's what we are. We're law-abiding citizens. But there's a huge debate. Should we carry open? Should we carry concealed? Well, that's part of the difficulty of freedom is you got to let other people do what they need to do. But the catch to that is we can't keep hiding all the time. If you're afraid to talk to your neighbor, if you're afraid to talk to your friends, you'll never change anyone's mind, and the only thing they're left with is what they see on TV, what they see in the news, and that isn't good because most of it isn't right. I always say to my wife, these crime dramas, I love watching crime dramas on TV, but if some law-abiding citizen was portrayed as the first victim, the show's over. It would be done. So we need to not be afraid and not hide. And we need to reach out. We need to get involved. So, I forget what else I have up here. I have this one. I'll try and end on this, because I could go on for days. One of the things that we've heard, and I have the quote at the top, the Supreme Court has ruled, and this is numerous times and not just federally, it's numerous state courts, that the state, the government, the police are not liable. They are not responsible for your individual safety. I make this point because I was looking up quotes the other day, going back to 1994, about the assault weapons ban, where the Washington Post wrote, "We know this isn't going to do anything, but it's a stepstone that if it's successful will lead to further gun bans." You got that? This is what they were saying 24 years ago. At the same time, Dianne Feinstein, we all love her, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Said, the police, people don't need to carry guns because they have the police and the National Guard to protect them. See a conflict there? Because I do. So, the whole point, people have asked, what's the point of today? The point of today is, one, to show these guys back here that we aren't some really small minority. We may be a minority because I know there's a lot of people that couldn't be here that we're all representing. I bet we're all representing 2 or 3 people we know. But we need to get them involved more. We need to make sure these guys know that we aren't some really minor little squeaky cog in their wheel that want our constitutional rights that Jim has been trying to bring back to us every term he's been in. They need to understand that we're serious, and that means we need to be involved. We need to let the media know that we know what they're up to. I've been at one of these and we got slammed by what I call the left stream media. And last night my interview went pretty well and came out pretty well. I don't see the reporter. I was hoping he'd be here, but maybe he isn't. I haven't seen him. But he did a fair job. But at a previous rally, there was 5 of us against 200 people from every town, and we were swarming them. And we weren't allowed in the steps. They were on the steps and all around us. We need to let the media know, and we need to use what we can and not be afraid of what they're going to paint us as. We need to go forward and educate our kids, our neighbors, and be that person. One other thing. Try to end this now. Somebody mentioned the Patriot groups. I'm going back to Boston again. At that time in Boston, 15,000 people, there were 7 documents found later on of Patriot groups. 250 names were on those groups. There was no organized leadership. They were very democratic about it. People saw needs and they formed a group and they took care of it. And that's where these groups are. If you're here, whether you think you're a 3%er, if you know what that is. If you don't, I encourage you to look it up. But you're a patriot. And in those groups, most people were only on one thing, one list. There were only 2 names on 5 lists. There were none on 6 and 7. Those 2 names were Paul Revere and Dr. James Warren, who were the 2 men who were most instrumental in getting that alarm out for Lexington and Concord. We need to be Paul Revere. It's not just your ride. You need to be sharing the information. Find, join. Because it's not just one person. It's all our posterity. It's our kids. I do this for my grandsons. Thank you.
All right.